The air in the office felt heavier than usual, like even the walls were holding their breath. Andrew stood near the tall window, staring at the skyline as if the answers he needed were hidden somewhere among the lights. His voice broke the silence, steady, distant, almost practiced. "It's easier with your friend." The words slipped out like a final note in a song that had already ended. Lena blinked slowly, her heart refusing to react even as it cracked quietly inside her chest. She didn't scream or cry. She simply stared, memorizing the face of the man who once swore she was his forever. He couldn't look back at her. He told himself he was being honest, that it was better this way, easier. But deep down, a quiet part of him knew he was walking away from something pure, something he might never find again. Lena's lips trembled, but her voice stayed calm. "Then you should go." The stillness that followed felt endless. She turned, took her bag, and walked out, her every step echoing softly like a heartbeat fading away. When the elevator doors closed behind her, she pressed a hand against her stomach. She hadn't told him yet. There were 2 lives growing inside her, small and silent. Tears welled but didn't fall. Somewhere between heartbreak and hope, she whispered to herself, "One day, they'll know what strength really means." Days turned into weeks, and Lena moved through them like a ghost learning to breathe again. The city that once sparkled with promise now felt like a blur of noise and lights she no longer belonged to. She packed her life into 3 suitcases, sold what she could, and left before the sun rose. No note, no forwarding address, only silence. Her destination was a small coastal town far from everything that had broken her. The air smelled of salt and morning bread, and the ocean stretched endlessly beyond the hills. She rented a tiny cottage with peeling paint and creaky floors, but the windows faced the sea, and that was enough. Each morning, she watched the horizon shift colors while placing a gentle hand over her growing stomach. Fear followed her like a shadow, whispering questions she didn't know how to answer. How will you do this alone? But somewhere inside her was a spark that refused to fade. She worked at a small bookstore, stacking shelves and breathing in the scent of old paper. People there didn't ask about her past. They just smiled and let her be. At night she wrote letters she never sent, to the man who chose easy over real. And in those quiet letters, she promised her unborn children a world built on courage, not convenience. The waves outside seemed to answer her, soft and steady, as if the sea itself believed her story wasn't over yet. The first time Lena heard 2 heartbeats instead of 1, the world stopped. She stared at the monitor, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and wonder. "Twins," the doctor said softly. And suddenly, everything changed. Fear flickered first. How could she care for 2 when she could barely care for herself? But then came something stronger, warmer, love. It filled every empty space Andrew's absence left behind. That night she sat by the window of her small cottage, the sound of waves whispering against the shore. She imagined tiny faces, small fingers curling around hers, laughter filling the quiet rooms. She whispered, "You'll never know what it means to be unloved." As months passed, the town began to notice her gentle smile, her quiet strength. An elderly baker left warm bread on her porch each morning, a silent blessing for the days ahead. Lena worked, saved, and planned, painting cribs, sewing tiny clothes, believing in tomorrow. Every kick reminded her she wasn't broken. She was becoming something stronger. She had lost a man who chose comfort, but she was gaining two souls who would teach her what love truly meant. And even as the storms rolled in over the sea, she knew she had already survived the hardest one. The night the twins arrived, the sky was roaring with thunder, waves crashing like drums against the cliffs. Lena's hands clutched the hospital sheets, breath sharp and trembling. Pain came in waves, fierce and endless, but beneath it was determination. Hours later, the world quieted. Two soft cries filled the room, tiny voices breaking through the storm. The nurse placed them in her arms, and Lena's tears finally fell, not from pain but from awe. Sky and Sophie. Two perfect miracles with dark curls and eyes so blue they seemed to hold the ocean itself. She pressed her lips to their foreheads and whispered, "You're my reason now." The next few months were sleepless, fragile, beautiful. Every sunrise found her rocking them near the window, the scent of salt and milk in the air. Some nights, she wondered if Andrew would have stayed had he known, but then she remembered his words. "It's easier with your friend." And she smiled sadly. Because love wasn't supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be real. As she watched her daughters sleep, she realized something powerful. Strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it looked like a mother staying gentle in a world that had been anything but kind. And in that realization, Lena found peace. 3 years later, the small seaside town had become a world of laughter and sunlight. Sky and Sophie ran barefoot across the sand, their giggles blending with the sound of the waves. They had their mother's calm eyes and their father's smile, though Lena never spoke his name. The bookstore where she once worked part-time was now hers, and its shelves were lined with stories of strength, love, and second chances. Every morning, she walked her daughters to preschool, then opened the shop windows to let in the ocean breeze. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Yet fate has a way of circling back. One warm afternoon, while attending a charity event in a hotel ballroom, Lena froze. Across the room, she saw him, Andrew, standing in a tailored suit, the same confidence in his stance, but something weary in his eyes. He didn't notice her at first, but then two small voices called out, "Mommy!" His gaze followed the sound. The glass in his hand slipped slightly, his breath caught. Those eyes, those unmistakable blue eyes, staring back at him from two little faces. The world around him blurred, the noise fading. It was like time itself had stopped to remind him of what he left behind. Andrew stood frozen as the two girls ran toward Lena, their laughter echoing through the hall like music he hadn't heard in years. His heart thudded painfully as realization settled over him. Those children had his eyes, his smile, his very soul. He watched Lena kneel to catch them, her face glowing with peace and strength. She looked different, softer, yet unshakably strong, like someone who had rebuilt her world from ashes. When her eyes finally met his, he felt the weight of every decision he had made. The confident man who once walked away from love now stood lost, staring at the life that could have been his. He tried to speak, but words failed. Lena simply smiled politely, the kind of smile that says, "I forgave you long ago." He approached slowly, voice trembling. "Are they—" She nodded once. "They're mine," she said softly, "but they're not yours to claim." The words didn't come from anger, they came from peace. He watched as Sky and Sophie held her hands and led her away, their laughter trailing behind like a melody of forgiveness. Andrew stood alone in that shining room, surrounded by wealth yet emptier than ever. For the first time he understood. Love was never meant to be easy. It was meant to be worth it.